The door closed in his face before he could finish his sentence. Nathan stood on the stone steps of the Whitmore estate and stared at the heavy wooden door for a long moment. The porch light buzzed above him. The neighborhood was perfectly quiet, the kind of quiet that only exists where people have enough money to make the world leave them alone. In his arms, his 4-year-old daughter Lily pressed her face against his shoulder. She was almost asleep, her small fingers curled into the fabric of his jacket. "Daddy," she murmured. "Are we going home?" "Yeah, sweetheart," he said softly. "We're going home." He carried her down the steps and back to his car, a 10-year-old sedan with a cracked dashboard and a heater that worked only on the passenger side. He buckled Lily into her car seat carefully, the way he always did, double-checking the straps out of habit. Then he sat in the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel with both hands. He didn't start the engine right away. He just sat there in the dark, looking at the lit windows of the house where his late wife had grown up. The house where her family had just told him, very clearly, that he and Lily were not welcome. He had not expected it to hurt that much. But it did. Nathan Cole was 34 years old and had been on his own since he was 17. He had grown up in foster care, 3 different homes across 2 states. None of them bad exactly, but none of them permanent either. By the time he aged out of the system, he had learned 2 things very well: how to work hard and how to need very little from other people. He had put himself through a community college, then worked nights at a logistics company while finishing a business degree online. It had taken 6 years and it hadn't been pretty. But he had done it. He met Sophie Whitmore at a mutual friend's birthday dinner when he was 28. She was funny and honest and completely unbothered by the gap between his world and hers. She was the daughter of a wealthy family, her father owned a chain of regional hotels, but she never behaved like it. She paid her own rent, wore ordinary clothes, and ordered the cheapest thing on the menu on their first date just to make him comfortable. He loved her for that. He loved her for 100 things. They got married in a small ceremony 18 months later. Her family attended but kept their distance, politely, carefully, the way wealthy people sometimes disapprove of things without saying it directly. When Lily was born, Sophie called her the best thing that had ever happened to them. She was right. She was always right about the things that mattered. Sophie died on a Tuesday. A car accident on a wet November road. She had been driving back from a client meeting. She worked as a freelance graphic designer, which her family had never quite forgiven her for, and a truck lost control on the highway. She was gone before the ambulance arrived. Lily was 2 years old. Nathan handled the first year the way a person handles the impossible, 1 day at a time, sometimes 1 hour at a time. He kept working. He kept Lily fed and warm and loved. He read her the same 3 books every night because routine was the only thing holding them both together. Sophie's parents, Edward and Margaret Whitmore, sent flowers after the funeral. Then a card at Christmas. Then nothing. Nathan had tried. He reached out twice in that first year, gently, because he believed Lily deserved to know her mother's family. Both times he received polite, distant replies. Margaret mentioned they were very busy. Edward didn't reply at all. The door closing in his face was the 3rd attempt. He had driven 40 minutes with a sleeping Lily in the back seat because Margaret had called him, the first time in over a year, and asked to see Lily. He had been hopeful. He had been foolish enough to feel hopeful. What Margaret had actually wanted was to discuss the possibility of Lily spending time with them independently. Without Nathan. She had used careful words, but the meaning was clear enough. Nathan had said no. The door had closed. Life settled back into its rhythm. Nathan's job at the logistics company had grown steadily. He was a regional operations manager now, which paid well enough to cover rent on a 2-bedroom apartment and put a little aside each month. He had found a good daycare for Lily, a warm woman named Miss Patricia who taught the children songs and kept a fish tank in the corner of the room. Lily was a happy child, which was the thing Nathan was most grateful for. She laughed easily and asked questions constantly and carried her mother's eyes, that particular shade of green that Nathan could not look at on hard days without feeling something break quietly inside him. He raised her the only way he knew how, honestly, steadily, without pretending life was easier than it was. Some evenings, when Lily was asleep, he sat at the kitchen table and looked at the small amount in his savings account and thought about the future. Not with panic, he had long since made peace with the absence of safety nets. But with the specific weight of a person who knows that if something goes wrong, there is no one to call. That was the part of being alone that he never said out loud. Sophie had been his person. The one he called. The one who knew the whole picture of him without needing an explanation. Without her, the quiet hours were very quiet. 8 months after the door closed, Edward Whitmore called. Nathan almost didn't answer. He didn't recognize the number at first, and when he did, he sat very still for 3 rings before picking up. Edward's voice was different than Nathan remembered. Older. Something in it had shifted, the polished authority had worn thinner. He said he wanted to meet. Just the 2 of them. No Margaret, no lawyers, no agenda. Just coffee. Nathan said he would think about it. He spent 2 days thinking. He talked to his friend Marcus, who had known him since college and had the useful habit of saying exactly what he thought. Marcus said, "Go. Worst case, you waste an hour. Best case, Lily gets a grandfather." Nathan went. They met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral ground, busy enough to feel safe. Edward arrived first. He was in his late 60s, gray-haired, wearing a jacket that was expensive but looked slept in. He looked like a man who hadn't been sleeping well. They shook hands and sat down. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Edward said, "I owe you an apology. I know that doesn't fix anything." Nathan looked at him. "Go ahead then." Edward talked for a long time. He talked about the night Sophie had told them she was marrying Nathan. Margaret had cried, not from happiness. Edward had said things he wasn't proud of. They had wanted something different for Sophie. Something that matched the life they had imagined for her. They had been wrong. He knew they had been wrong, and then Sophie was gone before he could tell her. That was the part that had clearly been eating at him the longest. Nathan listened without interrupting. He was good at listening, another thing foster care had taught him. You learn to read rooms, to hear what people mean underneath what they say. What Edward meant was this: he had been a proud, frightened man who had confused wealth with worth. He had looked at Nathan and seen only the absence of things, no family name, no property, no inheritance. He hadn't seen the person. "I looked into you," Edward said. "After Sophie died, I asked someone to look into your background. Your work, your life before." Nathan's jaw tightened. And I was ashamed of myself," Edward said. "What you built on your own. What you've given Lily. I had no right to treat you the way we did." Nathan picked up his coffee cup and set it down again without drinking. He was quiet for a long moment. "Why now?" he asked. Edward reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and placed a folded envelope on the table. "Sophie left something," he said. "With her attorney. She asked that it not be opened until Lily's 5th birthday." Nathan looked at the envelope. "Her 5th birthday is in 3 months. I know. The attorney contacted me last month. Sophie apparently left instructions. She wanted both of us in the room when it was opened." Edward paused. "You and me. Together." Nathan stared at the envelope. Sophie had planned this. Somehow, in the careful way she planned everything, she had looked ahead to a moment she hoped would happen and a moment she feared might not, and she had built a bridge between them anyway. He felt the familiar ache that came with thinking about how well she had known people. How clearly she had seen things. She knew, Nathan said. More to himself than to Edward. She knew, Edward agreed. His voice was rough. Nathan took the envelope. He held it carefully, the way you hold something that belongs to someone who is no longer there. "I'll be there," he said. "For Lily's birthday." He meant the gathering at the Whitmore estate that Edward was now quietly, carefully suggesting. Not the one where a door had closed in his face. A different kind. He didn't say yes because the Whitmores deserved it. He said yes because Lily did. The 5th birthday party was small. Nathan had kept it that way on purpose. Lily's friends from daycare, Ms. Patricia, Marcus and his wife, and then, separately in the afternoon, the Whitmore family. Edward and Margaret. 2 Aunt Sophie had always been close to. Margaret was harder than Edward. She stood in the doorway of the apartment with the posture of a woman choosing every movement carefully, and when Lily ran to her with the natural fearlessness of a child who doesn't yet know about complicated histories, something in Margaret's posture simply collapsed. She knelt down and hugged Lily for a long time. Nathan watched from across the room and felt nothing as simple as satisfaction. It was more layered than that. More human. After the cake, after the songs, after Lily had been put down for a nap with her new stuffed rabbit, the adults sat in the living room. The attorney, a calm woman named Diane, sat near the window with a leather folder on her lap. She opened Sophie's letter and read it aloud. Sophie's voice came through the words the way it always had, warm and direct, with a kind of honesty that didn't soften things unnecessarily. She wrote that she had loved her family and she had loved Nathan, and she had always believed those two things were not in conflict, only that no one had tried hard enough to find the common ground. She wrote that Lily deserved all of them. Sophie had also left something practical. Years before she died, she had quietly set aside a portion of her own inheritance, money she had received when her grandmother passed, into a trust. She had structured it carefully with Diane's help. The trust was in Lily's name, accessible when Lily turned 18, with one condition, that Nathan remain her guardian and that the Whitmore family maintain a real, ongoing relationship with her. Not a legal obligation, Sophie hadn't wanted that. She had written it as a request. A hope. Something she was asking of all of them. The room was very quiet when Diane finished reading. Margaret looked at Nathan and said, "She trusted you completely." "I know," Nathan said. "I should have trusted her judgment," Margaret said. "From the beginning. It wasn't a request for forgiveness. It was just a true thing, said plainly." Nathan nodded. "We both lost time," he said. "Let's not lose more." That was all. No long speech, no dramatic resolution. Just two people sitting in a small apartment with a sleeping 5-year-old down the hall, choosing to move forward because the person they had both loved had asked them to. The hidden truth Sophie had left behind was not a secret or a surprise. It was something simpler than that. It was proof of how clearly she had seen everyone in that room, and how much she had believed they were capable of better. Lily turned 6 the following year with both worlds fully present. Miss Patricia came. Marcus came with his kids. Edward arrived with a stuffed elephant because Lily had mentioned once, briefly, that she liked elephants, and he had remembered. Margaret brought a homemade cake, badly frosted, which surprised everyone, and which Lily declared the best cake she had ever seen. Nathan stood in the kitchen doorway watching all of it and thought about a lot of things at once. He thought about the closed door on the stone steps and the cracked dashboard of his car in the dark. He thought about Sophie ordering the cheapest thing on the menu and saying it was because she liked it, even though he had always known the real reason. He thought about the first year after she died and how the nights had been so heavy he sometimes just sat on the floor of the hallway outside Lily's room, listening to her breathe, because it was the only thing that helped. He thought about how far that was from here. Lily ran past him with a paper crown slipping sideways off her head, laughing at something Edward had said, her green eyes bright and completely unaware of every storm that had been weathered to get her to this ordinary, perfect afternoon. Nathan straightened her crown as she ran by. She grabbed his hand for exactly 1 second, squeezed it, and kept running. That was enough. That was everything. Some things you build slowly, quietly, without knowing if they'll hold. And then one day you look around and realize they held after all.